So today we are going to discuss lesson number 2, the flower. First we will discuss about structure of a flower. A flower is the most attractive part of the plant, as we all know. A flower develops from the bud. It develops from the bud. A flower is attached to the shoot by the pedicel. This portion is called the pedicel. Upper swollen end of pedicel is called thalamus. This is the dissection part of the flower, but this swollen part on which sepals are located, that portion is called thalamus. All floral part like calyx, corolla, stamens, pistil are attached to the thalamus. All the parts of flower are attached to the thalamus only. Some plants have sessile flowers. Sessile flowers means the flower which don't have these pedicel. That type of flowers are known as sessile flowers. Now, we will discuss about the parts of flower. First part is this calyx. Calyx is also called as sepals. This portion is called calyx. Outermost whorl, it is the outermost whorl. It is present on the outermost side. It is the outermost whorl formed of tiny green leaf-like structures called sepals. It is a green leaf-like structure. Its function is to protect inner walls of flower. The parts which are present inside, its main function is to protect those parts. The second most important part is corolla. It is formed of petals. Corolla is also called as petals. So calyx is also called as sepals and corolla is also called as petals. It is the colorful part of the plant. Its main function is to attract insects for the pollination, or we can say it plays a very important role in pollination. Now, third part, androecium. This portion is called as androecium, or we can say stamen. Third whorl, it is the third whorl of the flower present inside the petals. Present inside the petals. It is formed of stamens. Stamen. It is also called the male reproductive part of the flower. It plays a very important role in pollination and fertilization. The main parts of stamen are anther and filament. Each stamen has two parts, filament and anther. This portion is called as filament and this is called as anther. Each anther lobe contains two pollen sacs. One pollen sac is this and one pollen sac is this. Pollen grains are formed in these pollen sacs of anther that I will explain in another PPT, another slide. Pollen grains produce male gamete for fertilization. Androecium is the male reproductive part. That's why they produce male gametes which play a very important role during the fertilization process. Now, fourth one is gynoecium, this part. Gynoecium is made up of stigma. This part is called stigma. This part is called style and this part is called ovary. This is the stigma, this is the style and this is ovary. Ovules are situated in the ovary. It is also called as female reproductive part. It is the fourth innermost. It is present inside the flower. It is formed of flask-shaped structure. You can see this structure is flask-shaped. It is also called pistil or carpel. Now, pistil consists of three parts. First is stigma, second is the style, and third is ovary. So in this picture, we had discussed about the parts of flower. First part is sepals, this green color part. It is the outermost part. Second part is corolla. It is the second inner part of the flower. Then third part is stamen. It or we can say androecium. It is the male reproductive part of flower. Stamen is made up of two parts. First one is anther, second one is filament. Then fourth part is gynoecium. We can say it is the female reproductive part of the flower. It is made up of three parts. First is a stigma, second is a style, and third is ovary. The stigma is the swollen tip. It is the swollen tip. It is very sticky to trap pollen grains brought for pollination. The pollen grains which brought by the insect, insects sit on the tip of the flower or tip of the pistil, and the pollen grains stick here. Then style. This portion is called the style. It is a long thread-like middle part of the pistil. It is only thread-like structure. Through that, pollen tube grows. Then the third most important part, swollen basal part of the pistil. It is the swollen basal part of the pistil. Ovules are present in ovary. These are called the ovules. These are present in the ovary. Ovule contain female gamete or egg. They contain eggs, which also play a very important role in the process of fertilization. After fertilization, this ovary convert into fruit. After process of fertilization, this ovary convert into fruit, and the seeds and the ovules convert into seeds. Now, types of flowers. First is accessory whorls like calyx and corolla. These are not essential. These are accessory only. They increase the beauty of the flower, but they did not play an important role in the fertilization process. And androecium and gynoecium are the essential whorl. They are required because without that, fertilization process does not take place in the plant. That's why we call them the essential whorls. Now, calyx and corolla. As I had already explained you, calyx is the outermost whorl formed of tiny green leaf-like structure. Its function is to protect the inner wall of the flower. And corolla also, it is the second wall. These petals are called as corolla or petals. It is the colorful part of the flower. Its main function is to attract insects for pollination. Now, androecium. Androecium is also called male reproductive organ. These are called as androecium or stamens. Stamen are made up of basically two parts. First one is anther, second one is filament. Each lobe, I had already explained, pollen sacs are present. Pollen grains are formed in pollen sacs. Pollen grains are formed here in the pollen sac. Now, gynoecium. Gynoecium is made up of three parts. First is a stigma, second is a style, third is ovary. Stigma is the swollen tip, what I had already explained you. It traps the pollen grains. Then style, it is the long tube-like structure. Ovary is the swollen basal part. Ovule, after fertilization, the ovary converts into a fruit and the ovules converts into a seed. Then types of flowers. There are basically two types of flowers. On the basis of their presence of male and female reproductive organs, flowers are of two types. First one is bisexual, second one is unisexual. Bisexual flowers are those flowers when they have both male and female reproductive organs. Means stamens and pistil both are present together in the flower, that type of flowers are known as bisexual flowers. Like hibiscus, China rose, gurhal, mustard, those are bisexual flowers. Now unisexual, when flower have either male reproductive organ or female reproductive organ. If the stamen is present in the flower, then these type of flower are called staminate flower. They are also called unisexual flower. And when the pistil is present in the flower, then they are called pistillate flower or unisexual flower. The examples of these types of flowers are papaya and maize. These both are unisexual flowers. Now, depending on the presence of floral whorl, flowers are of two types. First one is complete flower and second one is incomplete flower. Complete flower are those flowers which have all four whorls, means calyx, corolla, stamens and pistil. These four parts are present in a flower. This type of flower is called as complete flower, like China rose and papaya. Now, incomplete flower, when a flower have one or more whorl missing in them. If calyx is not present, then also it is incomplete flower. When corolla is not present, then also it is incomplete flower. When androecium is absent, then also it is incomplete. And when gynoecium is absent in the flower, then also it is called as incomplete flower. Now we are going to discuss about function of the flower. There are four main basic functions of the flower. First one is reproduction. They help in reproduction and produce male and female gamete. Second one is used for decoration and on different places. They are also used for decoration on the different places. Third is ovary of flower develops into fruit and ovule forms seed. When we discuss about source of the food, so ovary of the flower, after fertilization, ovary of the flower develops into fruit and the ovules which were present in the ovary, they form seeds. Then seeds grows into a new plant. Fourth is flowers are used for worship. Flowers are also used for worship. So these were the four functions. First one is reproduction, then ornamental value, then source of food, then religious significance. Till here the portion is clear?
Ma'am, I have doubt. Ma'am, I have doubt.
Tell me fast, beta. Tell me. All.
Ma'am, your voice is not coming clearly.
Yes, ma'am. Her voice is clear. Everything is clear.
So shall we start again from
Yes,
pollination?
ma'am. Yes,
Till
ma'am.
here the portion is clear?
Ma'am, but your voice is not coming.
Now?
Yes, ma'am.
The net connection is clear, I think. Then why voice is not coming? Now is it okay?
It is vibrating. Yes, ma'am. Don't do
Why my voice voice is not
No,
clear.
it is not vibrating. It's clear.
Now,
No, yes.
is it clear?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am, it is clear.
So shall we start from pollination?
Yes, ma'am.
Chalo, okay, I'm again going to
Yes,
mute
ma'am.
you all. So, pollination is the process of transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigma of a flower. When the pollens are transferred from anther to stigma, that is called as pollination. And there are two types of pollination. First is self-pollination. Second is cross-pollination. Self-pollination means when pollination occurs in flowers of same plant. When pollination occurs in flowers of same plant means, see, when pollens are pollinated from anther to ovary or stigma of the same plant, then it is known as self-pollination. Transfer of pollen grain from anther of a flower to stigma of the same flower. Then second one is transfer of pollen grain from anther of a flower to a stigma of another flower of same plant. First is when pollen grain transfer from anther to the stigma of same plant. When pollens transfer from the anther to stigma of another plant of same breed, this is called as pollination. Then cross pollination occurs between two flowers of different plants. When the pollination occurs in different plants, then it is called as cross pollination. As you can see in the picture, self pollination means pollination occurs between the same plants or the plants of same breed. Then cross pollination occurs between the different plants. Now the agents of pollination. The agents of pollination like water, insects, animals, wind. These are also called as pollinators. The agents of pollination like water, wind, insect and animals, they are also called as pollinator. Now I am going to explain you the pollination by wind. Transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigma of a flower. Transfer of pollen grains. Transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigma of another flower, that is called as wind pollination. It occurs through the wind only. The characteristic features of wind pollination are wind pollinated flowers are colorless, tiny and without fragrance. Their pollen grains are light and produce a large number. Stigma of these types of pollen grains are feathery. Now pollination by water. Transfer of pollen from anther to stigma of a flower takes place by water. Water plays a very important role in this type of pollination. Transfer of pollen grains takes inside the water only. This type of pollination occurs in aquatic plants like Hydra, Vallisneria. Here I had given the example of Vallisneria. In Vallisneria, male and female flowers are born on separate plants, remain under the water. Male and female male and female flowers are found on different plants. On maturing, male flowers get separated from parent plant. When they get mature, the male flowers are separated from their parent plants. At the same time, female flower float on the surface of the water. These are the male plant, and this is the female plant. It also float on the surface of the water. When male flower come in contact with the female flower, here they come in the contact with female flower, the pollen grains stick to the stigma and pollination completed. Here, the pollen grains stick to the stigma of female flower and the pollination completed. This was the pollination by water. Now, the pollination by insect. Transfer of pollen grains by insect is called as insect pollination. Flowers are pollinated by insects like honeybee, wasp, butterflies. These insects suck the nectar of the flower. These insects suck the nectar of the flower. When these insects sit on the flower, then pollen grains stick to the body of the insect. When they sit on a flower, the pollen grains which are present on the flower, they stick on the body of the insect. And when the same insect visit another flower, pollen grains are deposited on the stigma of that flower. First, they sit on a flower. The pollen grains which are present on the flower, they stick with the body of the insect. When the same insect sit on another flower, the pollen grains which is stuck with the body of insects, they deposited on that flower on which insect sits. Insect pollinated flower are bright color, sweet smelling, and have sticky pollen grains and stigma. This was the pollination by insect. We don't have a lot of time. That's why I'm not going to explain fertilization now. On the next turn, I will start from fertilization. Yes, beta.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay,
This
ma'am.
portion is
Okay,
there.
ma'am.
Ma'am, I
Okay,
have
ma'am.
doubt. Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, doubt.
Tell me.
Ma'am, I don't have any doubt.
Who
Ma'am,
is having
what is
doubt?
the meaning? Ma'am, I have doubt.
Tell me.
Ma'am,
Hello.
that worship and make garlands of flowers. Hello, ma'am.
Tell me. Tell me.
Yes, ma'am. What is the meaning of religious significance that flowers are used for worship and making garlands?